just want to sit down and talk to you. Nothing scripted, just sharing thoughts, feelings, a little late night ramble. I do hope you're cozy, maybe snuggled up with a blanket, a warm drink, or just letting my voice keep you company tonight. So tonight I wanted to talk about the phenomenon of ghosting. And chances are, like me, you have experienced ghosting. And there are just so many feelings that one has whenever they are ghosted. You have confusion, wondering what you did wrong. I know that feeling all too well. And I just want you to know, you're definitely not alone. Ghosting is so prevalent in dating culture these days, but it's more than that. It's permeated more than just dating culture. It also is in just friendships. I'm sure that just about every one of us has experienced some form of ghosting. And it's just so strange because one moment you're talking to someone and laughing and sharing, and the next they're just gone and there's just silence. No explanation, no closure. They're just gone. In our minds, I don't know about you, but I'm an overthinker. And they love to fill in the blanks. Overthinking and replaying old messages and wondering if we missed something. I haven't really told a lot of people this story. The big, major ghosting story in my life. But I will say that I'll preface this with that I have been ghosted in every relationship that has ended. And a lot of the times the relationships were, and pardon my computer, it's sometimes loud when it hums like that. I'm so sorry. It's just an old computer, and well, I'm getting off track, but my apologies for that also. There is quite a bit of wind outside right now. It's quite howling out there. So there's going to be a little bit of background noise, and I am so sorry about that. Yeah, my computer sounds like a jet right now, as I've been told. My sincerest apologies. It should die down at some point. Maybe. But, as I was saying, I have been in not a whole lot of relationships, but ghosting me. And I know that that probably sounds crazy, and it is crazy. Like, how did that happen? It's a long story, of course. It spans a whole decade, but I'll try to give you guys a condensed version as much as I can while touching on certain points of stages of that relationship. But I met this person, and I call him Karen now. His name starts with a K, and yeah, just I can't think of him as anything but Karen now, so I'm going to refer to him as Karen here. And it's not to protect his privacy or anything like that, it's just how I think of him now. I met Karen when I went to community college, and it was the second to last semester. No, wait. It was my last semester at that community college. And I was taking business courses. And I had the same professor a couple of semesters for different business courses and all that. And I was late to class one day. The first day of school. The first day of classes. I was late, and for anybody that knows me, they know that I am very, very rarely late to anything. I am usually always early, or at least on time. Very, very rarely late. But I was late that day, and it turned out that it changed the trajectory of my life significantly. It's just crazy how that works out, but I got there late, and I went into the room, and basically all the seats were taken that I could see, and the only one open was next to a guy in the back of the class, and I took it. And that guy turned out to be Karen. And at the time he had a girlfriend, and I was, well, I guess I've never really had like a wild era, but it was a moment in my life when I did have interest from other men, and it was a time that was quite tumultuous for me because my mother passed away a few months previously of this event, and it was very sudden, and I was just in a bad mindset, I would say, and I didn't realize it at the time. I'd always struggled with self-esteem issues, and especially when I was younger, as I've gotten older, that has kind of games or what have you. So we got teamed up. And it was like not much to it, really. We did our assignments and we didn't like hang out after class or anything like that. And since it was a community college, it was there was no dorms or anything, so we always left campus, and so there was no way to see them outside of class, really. So there wasn't a lot to this, really. In the beginning, it was just a little bit of furtive glances toward each other and things, and the only way I knew that he had a girlfriend was because he would be getting texts, and he would look at his phone, and he would just be, it was obviously not going well, and things like that. And we added each other on like social media at the time and stuff like that. So I found out those ways. Well, the semester goes by, and he just kind of messages me on said social media, kind of out of the blue, and it's just like, hey, how did you do in the class? And I was just like, I can't remember what I did. To be honest, at that time, I wasn't doing the best with my studies, and I always had been really a studious student. But at that time, I was not really doing my best because I was still reeling from the death of my mother. But I told him, and then the conversation in text form on the social media was just like, it was starting to die down, because I mean, it felt like we didn't really have anything to discuss after the class was over, right? Well, that's just what happens in the movies. That's just what happens like that. It's not real life. That stuff doesn't happen in real life. You know, this is what it is probably, it feels like, right? Well, it just kind of blossomed from that. So, we would see each other like every weekend. We would alternate weekends. He would come here one weekend, I'd go there one weekend. I met his parents like the second week that we were quote unquote dating. We hadn't made it official yet. And it just continued from there. And I thought that he and I had a lot in common. We both liked football and video games and just, we had like similar interests, but it was, I don't know, almost like contrived in a way. And I'll get to that a little bit later as to him and his personality. And as you can tell, I'm so far into this story and I haven't really mentioned his personality, but Karen didn't have much of a personality. Let's just be real, he just did not. He was not passionate about really anything. He was just very even keeled, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, you know, but I've realized I want passion, and I want somebody to not just be passionate about me, but be passionate about other things in life. So Karen and I, you know, we went on typical dates, and then it got about 3 months into our relationship when we had made it official, like, and it was that moment when it was just like, well, I guess it's time to really get serious with each other. And the L word was about to be tossed around. And, you know, thinking back on it, I knew I cared about him, but I don't know if I loved him at that point. But it felt like it was the time to do it. And see, this is what I'm saying, y'all. I had very little dating experience. And yeah, I said it. I said it first. So it's hard to think back, and I'm not gonna lie, like, telling this story, it feels like I have some sort of detachment with it, because it feels like this happened to someone else. So it's hard for me to say what I was really feeling back then, because I don't remember having ever have like very intense emotions for him. But I thought I first time because you don't know what you're doing, and you get two virgins together, you really don't know what you're doing. So, needless to say, we didn't know what we were doing. But again, you watch those teen movies back then, and you're just like, oh, this is gonna be some miraculous event, and it wasn't. It wasn't. There was no sparks or fireworks or anything like that. But again, I justified it as that's just because this is normal and this is real life. So that becomes a theme in my story. So anyway, we do, and it wasn't good. And we really didn't have sex very often after that. And that's just the truth. It was just, there never was, like, true desire on my part. And I don't think he had true desire for me either. So it just was not going well. But we both were just like, we love each other and all this kind of stuff. So truthfully, it became more of a friendship than anything. And it started relatively early. But, we did normal things that couples do for years. And we went to concerts together, and we went to amusement parks, and we went to all kinds of things like that. And I got really close with his parents, and his brother, and his sister-in-law, and his niece, baby niece. And I was there every Christmas, every holiday I was with them. I just thought that they were my family, and they made it clear that they thought I was too. They told me that I was part of their family and everything like that. So, and again, this kind of harkens back to what I was talking about with timelines, but in my mind, my mother always told me, like, my mom and my dad, they were dating for 2 years before they got engaged and got married, right? So she was always like 2 years into a relationship, and if he's not committing to you, it's not gonna work out. Well, the 2-year mark hit, and it was just the same thing. And we talked about it. Karen and I talked about it constantly. Well, I definitely did. Because I really was starting to put the pressure on. Because I felt like, even back then, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. Like, this is not working out the way it should. And this is where I was emotionally abused and manipulated, because Karen continuously told me that he loved me, and whenever I would mention getting married, having kids, anything like saw me, it was always like, when are you guys getting engaged? I also had that with two of my closest friends who were just constantly just, when are we gonna hear wedding bells? You know? And every time I would just defend him mercilessly. I would always defend him. And I would just be like, I'm not sure, you know. And even his mother was talking to me on the phone one day, and she goes, so when are you two going to get married? Or something to that effect. And I was just like, you're gonna have to ask your son about that. It only happened one time from them. That was the only time they ever inquired about that. And my family was just merciless with it. But just went on, and time went on, and like my younger cousins were getting married, and quite younger than me actually, and getting married. And I would just be like, I would mention it to Karen, and just kind of hinting at it, like, my cousins are getting married, and when are we going to get married? I tried every approach. I tried just ignoring the fact that it was on my mind, and I tried just asking him outright about it, and that's when he would say, yeah, we're gonna get married, yes, I love you, all those things. And there'd be times when I kind of would hint at it, and I just tried to employ every tactic, and it was always kind of, yes, it's gonna happen someday. Day never happened. But years went by, as time is wont to do, and the relationship just continued to devolve in terms of just being a relationship, like romantic at all. And it wasn't just the physical intimacy, which was gone by year 4, maybe sooner, I can't remember. It was like physical intimacy even to kissing. And I didn't want to kiss him because he chewed tobacco, and he tried to lie about it, and he was just like, he said he wasn't doing it, but I knew he was, because you could see it all over his teeth, and I just didn't want to kiss him, straight up. I didn't want to kiss him. And also I found it in like our apartment. I guess I should back up. I ended up going to a 4-year university the summer after we started dating, right? And I lived in the dorms for a year, and he was still at the community college, finishing up his last semester over there, because he's a little younger than me. And so he ended up following me over to the college, the 4-year college, and we lived in the dorms together for a semester, I think, or 2, I can't remember now. But we eventually got an apartment, and it was right when I was going to graduate, essentially. It was my final year, my final 2 semesters. We got an apartment together. So, in this apartment, and this is when, strangely enough, the intimacy started to die. It just got really bad. And I was always was so confused because he kept telling me that he loved me so much. And that's why words don't matter to me now, because I need substance. I need action. So we're living over there, and I make a lot of mistakes because I end up paying for a lot of things. He did not have a job. I paid the rent, and it was agreed that I would pay the rent, and he would pay utilities and like the internet. Well, he ends up keeping the fact that he couldn't pay those bills away from me, and almost gets our electric shut off. Does get our internet shut off. And I have to go and get it turned back on and pay an exorbitant bill to do so. Because he wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't confide in me as to his issues. And this is another recurring theme with him. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't want to tell me the truth about things like that. He keeps stuff from me. And I still am, a very trusting person, and I just kind of believed him when I shouldn't have. He would try to manipulate me, and he abused my trust. Just being honest, he abused my trust. I even paid for his tuition one semester. I paid for his tuition, and that's of course not cheap. So I paid for him to go to college, and he barely went to class. He barely did anything. And I was always the type of person that loved school and didn't mind going to college. In fact, I he was going to go to college, and I thought that I would just stick around there while he did that and everything. It was a mistake to do that because he was barely going to class and doing anything for himself on that. Also, around that time, my father took ill, and I was not really at that apartment very often. I was having to spend more time taking care of my father. It just was a weird situation with that, but this whole situation was crazy. But after the lease expired, we let it expire, and I had paid for everything for 2 years over there. Even when I wasn't staying there, I was paying for it. He didn't have anywhere to go. He didn't graduate, but he essentially dropped out, quit, and he moved in here when I was living with my father and taking care of him, and he moved in with us. And if my mother was around, I don't think this would have happened, because I think she would have woke me up and exposed it. Like, laid my shit bare, as they say. And I just think that she would have figured him out. And my dad is a very perceptive man, and he had him figured out, but I just didn't have that. I don't know, he just didn't have that authority. And of course, I'm well over age, so he couldn't really tell me what to do. But it was growing very clear. It was becoming very clear that my father was getting very tired of Karen and was losing faith in him making it official with me. And my father is very traditional, very kind of old-fashioned in that way, and he just wants to see his daughter get married and be with a good person, and he knew that Karen wasn't that for me. I didn't know that, though, not till now. But he moved in here, and he got a job. He did get a job. He got a job because one of his family members actually got him a job at Target. So he was working, and he was working nights. And by this time, I was starting to just kind of give up on us ever getting married. There's just so many things I could tell you about. But there's just so much when it happens over such a long period of time. But it was basically just a lot of repetition, and there was things that happened that exposed a few, I guess, red flags that were really starting to become hard for me to justify and to forgive, essentially. Just sweep them under the rug, which is what I always did for him. There was situations where I feel now that he was on drugs, and I just ignored back then. And then it really was. It was just the same thing day in, day out for years. And we never had any intimacy anymore by this point. We barely kissed. It would be just like, how would you basically kiss your grandmother? Like, you would be a peck. There was just, we were basically like roommates. And, there was so many things that were so fucked up in that relationship but there's one thing that I am particularly embarrassed about and wish that I had never done. But he started baby talk. Bad baby talk. And it was, I can't describe how bad it was. Y'all, it was just, it was a very, he would do this high, like squeaky voice and everything. I'm telling you, it's embarrassing to admit that I even entertained that. But I did. And the reason why I say this is because I consider myself a reasonably smart human being. I have decent intelligence, I would say. And I was reduced to that. It was so bad. And his texts would be like that too. It was a lot of, I guess, very amplified text speak. Like lol. Like he would say lols. Everything had a C at the end, y'all. Everything had a C. Sometimes multiple C's. For emphasis. I'm telling you guys, it about killed me. I about died. My brain cells were dying. But that's just one of those things that was part of that relationship, and I might as well tell y'all about it. And it was absolutely horrible. Looking back on it, it was absolutely horrible, but it was just what we did. And I'm not kidding when I say that that was almost entirely how we spoke to each other for years. And it's a miracle my brain survived that and gifts, and I buy him gifts, and I'm spending a lot of money, consistently for all these years. And I really thought that they were part of my family, or that I was part of their family, I should say. So, the big events started happening when his truck broke down. He had a pickup truck that started acting up, and he couldn't drive from my place to his workplace, which was, I know I keep saying this, but it was about an hour away. So it was my suggestion, essentially. I was like, maybe you should move back with your parents who were closer to his workplace, temporarily. And he did. I remember his brother came and helped him load up his brother and his dad came to help him load up his truck and take it. And that was, I think, the last time I saw his brother in person. So I can't really remember exactly when that happened, but a few months go by and he gets an apartment, and he just gets an apartment and everything, and which is really close to his work. It's about 10 minutes away. This is where it really started to get crazy for me, because I was just like, why are you getting something without me? We've been dating this long. Why are you getting an apartment without me on the lease? We did that before, and obviously he was on the lease too, but I had paid for everything. He got an apartment, and I was just a visitor. I would come up and visit him, and it was a nice place, nice little apartment. But I was just a visitor. And looking back at the visits, I remember he always seemed to be worried that somebody was gonna come by. I would spend the night with him, and I distinctly remember him just always looking at his door, almost worried, just. And I didn't understand what the problem was with him on that. So, this is something that is really just terrible, but I get a cruise, right? A cruise to the Bahamas. And of course it's for two. And I am so excited about it. Of course, I'm I kind of think also, of course, good, but you can get by with just a passport card. So I had one made because this was my first time going out of the country. And I find out, like, the cruise was going to be in January of the following year. And I found out that I won it in, like, the summer previous, right? So there's, like, this long time before the cruise is going to happen. And I got my passport card and everything, and I kind of I'm really excited because, I mean, this is a big thing, going on a cruise, traveling. We never really traveled except for, like, one state down and everything, so I was really excited. And he was living in the apartment at the time, his apartment, and I kept, like, asking him, have you got your passport yet? He's like, I'm gonna get it. Kept kind of putting it off, and I would just be, like, talking about, like, the trip and all the cool stuff that we could do and all the excursions you could go on, like swim with dolphins. I mean, I was just super excited because it was something that I'd always wanted to do in my life, and I was just very excited about it, but he showed no excitement, like, the whole time. And then there came a time when I was just literally like, do you even want to go? Because if you don't want to go, you need to let me know now so that I can, take my dad or something. Obviously I was going to take him because he was my boyfriend. And he was just like, no, I want to go. Again, just feeding me bullshit. Literally a day before we were supposed to get on the flight to go to Florida, he tells me that he can't go. His excuse was that he had to stay there because he was going to get a car and he had to sign papers on it, so on and so forth. I was so incredibly pissed. And mind you, like, we had never really had any fights. Like, our relationship in that regard was smooth. We didn't fight. It was just boring as shit, but we didn't fight. So I thought we were in a good relationship, I will tell you though, I was livid, and I couldn't believe that he was going to abandon that. hours, and I start being like, hey, can I come see you? Can I come see ya? Because, weeks are going by, I haven't been up there to see him. And he just kind of gives me the runaround. He just says things like he's too tired from work or what have you, and he wouldn't come down to see me. So months go by, and it's essentially like a long distance relationship. I never see him really. In June, late June, I finally start having enough, and I'm just like, hey, I want to come see you. By this time, he had another moment when he was just like, my phone died. He did this several times in our relationship where he would have phone troubles, and so he couldn't return my calls or texts or anything like that. My apologies. My dog started to bark, so I had to take a moment. I decided to get a drink of water because I've been whispering for an hour. It's crazy. I didn't expect this to go on so long. But this is one hell of a story, and this is supposed to be the condensed version, and that's what you're getting is an hour of me talking about this situation, but there's just so much. There's just so much to it. And I kind of forgotten where I left off. Oh, we were basically corresponding just by email. And again, I was so trusting. I just kept being like, can I come see you? I don't even have to stay at your apartment the night. We can go out to lunch and hang out. I was just trying to make anything happen. But he kept turning me down. So I just didn't know what to do at this point. It was Independence Day, and I'll never forget that. It was the last day I ever heard from him. I guess I forgot about the last time he was at my house. It was probably a couple of weeks before the ghosting. He came to my house because he was just like, well, I need to pick up some things too. He wanted his TV, for instance, because the TV that we were using here was technically his. It was a gift from his parents. He wanted his TV, and he was just like, I need it for my apartment, all this kind of thing. So he came down here, and he got, he filled up his car with stuff, TV and other things, and I remember a very specific incident that happened. He was standing in the room with me, and there was like these stuffed animals that he was gonna give his little niece, and I was just like, he was gonna take them, and there wasn't like a lot of room left, and I just remember saying, well, hey, we'll see her. Eventually I'll bring them next time I come when they're in, and just strangest look came on his face, and I couldn't decipher it at the time. Just, I can remember it now. There was this look, and the look I now know meant there's not gonna be this next time. But he couldn't say that. He just was like, let it go. He just nodded in agreement that yeah, there was gonna be a next time. But he knew what he was going to do. And a few weeks later, he did it. He stopped emailing. There was really bad storms, really bad in his area, and I was so scared, and I just kept calling his phone, the number, over and over and over, and nothing. He wouldn't answer. And then I texted, of course. I called, I texted, I emailed. I did everything like that, but he never. The thing is like, I don't even know if he still even had that cell phone number anymore. Because I would call and he didn't have like a personalized voicemail message. And it would do the whole thing of ringing the full amount and then going to voicemail, so. But I called and called and called, and I'm not proud of that, but I mean, I did. And I sent emails. And probably a week or two goes by, and there's two very distinct sides to me on that. One side wanted to get in my vehicle, go to that apartment, and confront him. And the other side of me just was the exact opposite. I don't know as I explained earlier, I really do have a sense of, I don't know, it's almost like I am so detached from the event and that whole decade now, that it doesn't feel like, it feels like somebody else lived that. Somebody else lived through that. And after all my calls were being ignored, and I called constantly for a good time, for a good amount of time, and I finally started doing it less and less. And here's where I have regrets. I regret not contacting his parents or anybody, and just, I don't know, I felt something was wrong anyway, and I think that they thought we were broke up. I do think that. But Facebook tells all, and it still said we were in a relationship. At least on my end. But as I realized later, he deleted or deactivated that profile. He just disappeared. And I will never know what he told his family about me and about our relationship and how it ended. I'm sure he didn't admit that he was a coward and ghosted me. I'm sure he didn't admit that. And it bothers me. It bothers me that they don't know the true story. I just didn't have vengeance in my heart, I guess. When it came to him, I was still defending him for months. The only person I told about it was my best friend. And that was a month or so after the ghosting, because I was still just very much in shock. She wanted to go up there and confront him. But after that happened, I made a lot of good changes for myself. And I could have went down the wrong path. I could have just tumbled down the escalator. But instead I climbed up and I improved myself. And for that I am beyond proud of myself for that. The last text I sent that number of his was in November of that year. So it went from August, September, and October, and November, and dwindling calls and all that kind of thing that I was trying to contact him. And I've sent him a final text, and just said that I would always love him, and I don't know why he did what he did, but I hope that he would contact me someday. Needless to say, I don't feel that way now, and I don't know if he ever read that message or even got it. A few years, well, not even a few years later, but like a year later, I'm living my life post ghosting, and all of a sudden I get on Instagram, and there he is. People you may know. There he was. And my heart just stopped because the picture was of him and another woman. And it looked like a wedding. And it turned out it was. I looked at the profile and I found that he had a brand new shiny profile on both Facebook and Instagram. And I found his wife's page and everything. And it purely was out of curiosity. I was curious about it. And I looked back at her profile because his was very empty and not much on there. Besides, apparently he got a different job and everything, but there was a picture on her Facebook page of her and him, and it was obviously taken in that apartment. So that kind of, if you remember, I talked about him seeming uneasy and always looking at the door. I think he was dating her at the same time. That was the time frame that it hit, because she commented on the post, on the picture, and said that that was her boyfriend of 3 months at that time, and it was like in July when that was posted, right around when he ghosted me. So he was not only dating me or keeping me on the hook, but he was also dating her at that time. So one of us was the other woman. At that point, I'm not really sure. But that was the reason why he wasn't letting me come to the house, to his apartment rather, and that was why he just was giving me all kinds of lines, but he just kept telling me that he loved me and that it was all gonna work out. And all that time he was with her. And then to find out that he strong. But that broke me because I never understood why. And I will never understand why he chose to keep me on the line when he had no intention of marrying me. For a long time, it was probably about money. I was paying for things, and when I stopped doing that, maybe it was just, it dried up. The money dried up for him, and I don't really know. I can only speculate, and that's the kicker of the whole thing, is I don't know. I have absolutely zero closure. And a lot of that is my fault, because maybe I should have hunted him down and tried to find out the answers. I just didn't. But yes, that's my story. It's a really long one, I told you. And there is so much more to that, but those are the highlights. This is something that I've learned from all this. Ghosting says more about them than it does about you. It's not a reflection of your worth. People leave for all kinds of reasons, and regardless of the time frame, you could be dating for a week or a year, a few months, or in my case, over a decade. And if they leave, most of the time it has nothing to do with us. It's their inability to communicate, their fears, their issues, not yours. And if you ever ghosted someone, I get it. Maybe it was out of fear, anxiety, or just not knowing how to let someone down gently. That, I think, was the reason I was ghosted. I truly feel that he just couldn't bring himself to tell me that he didn't love me anymore, that he didn't want to be with me anymore, because we didn't fight and there was no discord amongst us. And I disappears, that just means they weren't meant to be a part of your journey. And that's what I feel. He and I were not meant to be together. And I am so thankful that I never got married. Because in the end, he let me go. It was in a really bad way, but he did let me go. I just wish I hadn't wasted so much time. But that's my journey. And I thank you so much for listening to me and for being here with me. It was good to talk about it, and I've wanted to do this for some time. If you have any experiences with ghosting that you would like to share in the comments, please do. I know I'm not alone on this, and feel free to talk about it. Let me know what happened, because I understand. You can always talk to me. Thank you so much again for listening to me and for dealing with the noises from my laptop here and any other little extracurricular background noise that you may have heard. I really appreciate it. And take care. I'll see you next time.